Hey everybody, welcome to Grease Pilot. My name's Michael Sawyer. Welcome to lesson 1. This is one of many lessons on getting your A&P license through OJT or in the field experience. There's many ways to call it, but getting your aircraft mechanics license without going to school and getting it through experience. That's what we're going to cover on this channel and are on these videos. And today's lesson 1. And I thought, what better lesson than to start with the requirements to get your A&P license through what we call OJT, on-the-job training, or you can call it experience, like I said. I always keep a clipboard when we're doing these lessons, mainly because I want to stay on task and there's no hiding things here. We just want to be transparent, but we also have a structured format to ensure that we provide the most value. We want to make sure we hit the topics that are important, and we'll kind of discuss loosely each topic. So, as I said before, in this lesson, we're going to go over the requirements for field experience or on-the-job training. If you want to get your A&P license, that's airframe and power plant. That's an aircraft mechanics license recognized here in the United States by the FAA. It's also got reciprocity, meaning it is recognized by other countries too, but that's another lesson, that's another video, but this is for mainly A&P license, airframe and power plant licenses in the United States. Why should you care about this subject? We wanted to start with what's required to get your A&P. It's important that before you start your journey that you understand what is required. You have to have a goal. Here at Grease Pilot, we believe deeply in setting specific goals. It may be kind of one of those things that people think's old school, but it's worked for me and it's worked for many of the others that I work with. And that's what we do here. So the key here is to set a goal. And you can't set goals unless you have to know what you need in order to set the goal. So this is going to cover the regulations for becoming an A&P through OJT. I've said that multiple times now, but so I wanted to make sure that I covered this before we go into the lesson content, that this channel is designed to give practicality to people too. So there's a lot of, if you go to A&P school, you're going to learn how to do things at the school. There's probably a lot of crossover practicality at the school too, but one of the huge positives of getting your A&P license through in the field experience is real world experience, working on real aircraft with real A&Ps and seeing what it's like day to day. That's probably the most advantageous part of getting your A&P license through OJT. So with that, our mission here at Grease Pilot is to take what we've learned collectively as mechanics and try to not just create A&P mechanics, but create top tier A&P mechanics, ones that will get hired by the best companies, mechanics that just kind of have a higher standard for being a good aircraft mechanic. And one more topic is the only way to be a top tier mechanic is to actually do no shortcuts. So yes, there's the internet. Yes, there's AI. Yes, there's many tools where you can shortcut your way through things now, but that does not mean you understand the subject matter and does not make you a good mechanic. So it's important that you understand that you must take the time to understand subjects until you fully understand it before you move on. That's, if you really want to be the best mechanic, that's what you have to do. And it may take a little more time, but it pays off down the road. All right, let's jump into the experience requirements. So these are regulations, and I'm kind of shortcutting the regulation, but we'll drop some links in the video. But we're going to look at 14 CFR, that's Code of Federal Regulations 65.77. So that's an important one. It calls out what's required to get your experience, or what experience is required to get your A&P. So CFR 65.77 says you must have at least 18 months of practical experience with the procedures, practices, materials, tools, machine tools, and equipment generally used in constructing, maintaining, or altering airframes or power plants appropriate to the ratings sought. This is a regulation, so when I'm saying this off, I did not write this. This is straight out of the FAA CFR regulations. So if you're going for A or P, that's airframe or power plant, because they are two ratings, You only need 18 months if you're only going to do one or the other of practical experience, of in the field experience. So let's move on. If you want both the airframe and power plant, you need at least 30 months of practical experience concurrently performing the duties appropriate to both the airframe and power plant ratings. So what they're saying there is, if you want to go at this from one shot, start to finish, and you want to get both ratings, which is what we recommend, and I think as you do your research, you will find out that that's the most common thing, is to get the airframe and power plant. You can do 30 months from start to finish if you just go all the way through and then get your airframe and power plant. So moving on, CFR 65.71A. These are just general eligibility requirements. Once again, some of this is kind of basic, but it's great to get the foundation of what's required to get your A&P license through experience. So to be eligible for an aircraft mechanic certificate, which is A&P rating or A&P license, and associated ratings, a person must be at least 18 years of age, be able to read, write, speak, and understand the English language, or in the case of an applicant who does not meet this requirement and who is employed outside the United States by a U.S. air carrier, have his certificate endorsed valid only outside the United States. You must have passed all of the prescribed tests in a period of 24 hours. So what it's saying is, to rehash this, you have to be 18 years old to get your aircraft mechanic's license or older. You have to be able to read, write, and understand English in the United States if you want to get your aircraft mechanic's license here in the United States. And then all the tests to get your A&P license or ratings, you have to pass those all within 24 hours. So there's 9 tests. You need to get them all done in 24 hours? 24 months. You have 24 months to pass all 9 tests. That may sound like a lot, but I think you'll find out that it's not that bad. And if you really want to become an aircraft mechanic, many people have done it. I've done it. Many people around me have done it. There's thousands of them obviously working on planes. It's not hard. So if you're dedicated, I should say. So pass all your tests within 24 months. And then we'll kind of just go over the 9 tests right now to get to complete within 24 months. So you have the general written, general oral and practical, airframe written, airframe oral and practical. Then you have power plant written. Then you have power plant oral and practical. So we have a lot of lessons to do here. I'm not going to go in depth in each one of those tests, but those are the 9 tests. The moral of the story is, once you start taking tests, you have to complete them all within 24 months. So get your practical experience, then start testing. Once you start your first test, which will be the general written, you have 24 months from the time that you get the general written done to when you get your airframe done and your power plant done. This is CFR 65.75. All these are regulations that pertain to getting experience in the field and getting your aircraft mechanic's license. Except as specified in paragraph C of this section, each applicant for a mechanic certificate or rating must, after meeting the applicable experience requirements of 65.77, pass a written test appropriate to the rating sought, which includes the aeronautical knowledge subject areas contained in the Aviation Mechanics General Airframe and Power Plant Airman Certification Standards. Okay, moving on. The applicant must pass each section of the test before applying for the oral and practical test prescribed by 65.79. A report of the written test is sent to the applicant. What it's saying is, before you can take the oral and practical portions of the airframe, you have to take the airframe written test. So before you can even take the order of taking tests, we'll go ahead and put down below, but what we recommend for taking the test. But what this reg is saying is, you must take the written test before you can take the oral and practical tests. Okay, moving on. So this is CFR 65.79. Each applicant for a mechanic certificate or rating must pass an oral test and a practical test, as appropriate to the rating sought, by demonstrating satisfactory understanding of the knowledge, risk management, and skill elements for each subject contained in the Aviation Mechanics General Airframe and Power Plant Airman Certification Standards. So it's now, the testing standards are now called the ACS for an aircraft mechanic. That's Airman Certification Standards. So when you take your test, you're going to want, part of your study material is going to be reviewing these ACS standards and making sure you meet the standards of each of those tests. Okay, moving on. So that's CFR 65.79. And we have, I think, one or two more FARs. And I'm sorry, they're kind of dry. But I do think it's important that we read the regulations that pertain to it. That way, if you need to call them up or know what the regulation is, then we've at least covered it. So let's move on to the next one, get this over with here, these regulation things. So this is actually an FAA order, which is FAA Order 8900.1, Volume 5, Chapter 5, Section 2, Paragraph 5-1134. This is regulation, so there's tons of it. But this, I picked out what's applicable to OJT or experience requirements for an aircraft mechanic, and that's what we're covering. So this is more of what the FAA is going to look at when they evaluate your experience. This is kind of the standard for when you bring all your stuff into the FAA office to get evaluated, to take your test. They're going to kind of evaluate it based on this. So applicants must have experience listed in 50% of the subject areas of the Aviation Mechanics General Airframe and Power Plant ACS, Airman Certification Standards, as applicable to the rating sought. So you must cover at least 50% of the ACS subjects. Moving on, the applicant who presents evidence in the form of documented practical experience in maintaining airframes or power plants must go through a FSDO. So what it's saying is, if you are doing this via the experience route, if you're getting your aircraft mechanics license through experience, in order for you to test for the aircraft mechanics license, you have to go to what's called a FSDO office, Flight Standards District Office. This is a regional office that serves, I think there's 50, there might be more and things change, but if you Google local FSDO, FAA FSDO, your FSDO that serves your location will show up in the United States. You're going to go to that office and you have to get authorization from them to take the test. That's what this is saying. Excuse me. During the evaluation of part-time practical aviation maintenance experience, the applicant must document an equivalent of 18 months for each rating individually or 30 months concurrently of experience for both ratings. This is based on a standard work week that has 8 hours per day for 5 days per week, or a 40-hour work week, or a total of approximately 160 hours per month. The time is cumulative, but the days, weeks, and months are not required to be consecutive. So that is saying that they're going to evaluate your time based on full-time, 40-hour work week, meaning if you're going at this part-time, which you're more than welcome to, you can do this thing part-time, but they're just going to kind of look at it from a full-time thing. So if you only did 1 day a week, but you did 30 months of that, they're not going to count that. So they're going to evaluate it based on full-time status. So that'd be 40 hours per week is what they're going to want to see it total up to. Okay, moving on. This is important. This is the form that you're going to fill out when you go to the FAA office to get your mechanics license or apply to take the test to get your mechanics license. And that form is FAA Form 8610-2. This is an application for an aircraft mechanic license or rating. The Form 8610-2, this is the application for a mechanic certificate, and it must be filled out and signed by an ASI at the FSDO before you take any of the A&P test. An ASI is an airworthiness safety inspector. Pages 4 and 5 give you the instructions on how to fill out each section of the form. So the form is kind of long. It's not really that long. There's a lot of pages that just tell you how to fill out the form. So when you're filling things out for the FAA, take your time. If you want to do it on the computer, that'd be great. But read the instructions on how to fill out each block on the form. So You must have the experience requirements in 65.77, that's what we spoke about earlier, before you can submit this form to the FAA. So in short, before you fill out this form, you have to show all your experience. So it's kind of a package deal. You want to fill out the form and gather all your experience and then take it all at once, or submit it to the FAA and say, hey, am I ready to take my test? So the ticket to getting authorization to take a test is to get Block V on the 8610-2 signed by an ASI. So once they look at all your experience and they look at your application, the 8610-2 form, and they see that it's all good, they'll sign Block V. Once they sign that, you're authorized to take the next test. So the first one, like I said, is going to be the general written test. Okay, so every time we do one of these lessons, I'm going to try to relate it to some of the ACS codes so that we can kind of have some practicality, or excuse me, I'm going to relate it to the ACS codes so that you can take this knowledge and apply it to the test, so it actually helps you for the test as well. The relevant ACS code for this lesson is AM.I.I.K5, purpose and use of FAA forms. So that is a knowledge code in the ACS, and so that means you must know that. So you must know what an 8610-2 form is, and like we said, that's an application for an aircraft mechanics license. Okay, so we're done with covering all the regulations. Now we'll just go into some summary. This is a quick just what you should take away from this. So CFR 65.77 means says you should have 18 months of experience for A or P, airframe or power plant, or 30 months for both the A and P. As we said just a little bit ago, the 8610-2 form is the form to fill out and take to the FSDO to have signed when experience in 65.77 is met. Okay, takeaway number 3. Experience, whether it be part-time or full-time, must add up to full-time hours. Does not have to be concurrent. Takeaway number 4. You must document experience in at least 50% of the ACS subjects for the area you are testing for, general airframe or power plant. And takeaway 5. If you have any questions, make sure to drop us a line at office@greasepilot.com. We really want to make this kind of a community thing, so we want to hear back from you guys to see how we can help you become a top-tier mechanic. We have a huge network of A&Ps on our side here, and they have tons of experience in everything from small pistons to jets to helicopters. And so if we can connect you with somebody, if we can answer your questions, if we can help you with the FSDO, the FAA, if you want us to even jump on a call with you with the FAA to kind of go through some of your questions for them, we can do that. So we'll do that as much as we can. Please understand that we could be busy, but that's what our purpose here is to try to help people get their mechanics license through in the field experience. And not only that, but just create good mechanics, top tier mechanics. So it takes a little time to make each one of these lessons, but I hope that you stay tuned, subscribe if you like what you see, because we're going to come out with much more. And then also, if you have a school.greasepilot.com membership, you can head over to our website, take the quiz, and get a A&P signed certificate for this. That does help prove experience towards your A&P license. And with that, I'd like to say thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Grease Pilot Show.